I think since morning we've been uniformed, if I may say. This session is, like Sunita said, closer to our hearts. It's about our jobs, our wealth, womanhood. So we break away from the services to the aspects that matter to the civilian population, to all of us here as well as back home. So we have, of course, Shinjini Kumar. She's the author of Busy Woman, Decode's Financial Agency of the Indian Women, and of course Saurabh Mukherjea, author of Breakpoint, who maps technocratic shifts in the Indian economy. Now, just so that we get everybody into this panel, instead of just shooting some questions, I thought I will start with icebreaker, if I may call it. So in one sentence to both of you all, what is the biggest breakpoint or the old way of doing things that you're personally glad to see dying in 2026?
I'll start. So, can you guys hear me?
No.
Yeah, this should work. So thank you very much, Rajini, for inviting me. Thank you to the organizers. This is only the third time in I think 11 years of writing that I'm in the Litfest in Mumbai. So feel particularly fortunate. Thank you. So let me give you a couple of chota stories which give you the breakpoint, right? And I'll try to give you stories which interplay with Shinjini's Busy Woman and Mera Kitab Ka Breakpoint Ka. So 2 years ago, I'd gone to San Francisco on some work. I'd gone to sing for my supper. I'd raise money for business. So I was staying in a 3-star, 4-star hotel in downtown San Francisco. And at night, I was returning after eating at a local Pakistani dhaba. I was eating some curry and roti, and I was returning. And I saw this Indian kid standing outside our hotel, smoking. And through the corner of my eye, I could see that once he saw me, he threw the cigarette away and he stamped his feet. And I thought, chalo, kuch so bhi izzat hamare desh mein kuch hai, hum jaise butto ke liye. But anyway, as I was about to hit the elevator button, this young man came to me and said, "Can I have a word?" And I said, "Haan, boliye, kya chahiye?" He says, "No, I've heard plenty about Marcellus and I just wanted to get your thoughts on my situation." So he explained the situation. He's a 21-year-old graduate from Pilani, and he'd come to pitch to Y Combinator in Silicon Valley. Right? दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी angel funding startups के लिए Y Combinator is very famous. So I said, "You don't need their money to get your business going." He said, "The funding already I have from a family office in Kanpur. Family office in Kanpur has already funded me, and anyway the relationships I want to build with back in India. So इनका पैसा मुझे लेना नहीं है." That was the first big point. Now wait for this. So I said, "Okay, congratulations. In which case, enjoy your time in Silicon Valley. And when you become a billionaire, remember this kid is 21. When you become a billionaire, please remember to become a Marcellus client." He says to me, "I'm already a Marcellus client." Right? I said, "Boss, this is new India way. Because of our Indian rules, to become a client, you need at least say a crore." And this 21-year-old kid already had saved the crore and invested with us. So I think that was my first experience. This is 2 years ago, San Francisco. Young kid from small town India, Pilani. No need for Western validation. He's not seeking Western validation. He's happy to take money from a family office in Kanpur.
That's the break point.
That's the big point. But if you give me money anyway, why not? मैं आपके पैसे में San Francisco होके आता, right? Second break point, whilst I was writing the book itself. So a year or so.
It's one sentence break point. We have an entire 50 minutes.
No, so I'll just get to chutkas because this one now plays with Shinjini's book.
Okay.
Right, Busy Woman. So around a year and a half ago, a young lady from Indore got in touch. Right? Again, it's Pilani, and she said, "I want to, I come from a conservative Marwadi family. If I hang around, they'll marry me off. So मुझे फटाफट country से निकलना है. Bits Pilani हो गया मेरा. What should I do?" And I suggested a few things. And good for a smart girl, she got a job with a hedge fund in New York, right? And as soon as she got the hedge fund job, she was out of here. But a year ago, I went to Indore on work, and I typically travel around small town India to understand what's happening in the country. So I asked her, "Can you help me meet your dad, right? Your parents, your dad." So her dad is a real estate developer in Indore, and I met him for breakfast in Indore. And we discussed the booming real estate market in Indore and how expensive everything is becoming. And then towards the end of this meeting, this gentleman whose daughter, much against his wishes, has gone off to work for a hedge fund in New York. He says to me, "Saurabh, एक help कर दोगे मेरे लिए?" तो मैं बोला, "बताइए." He says, "मुझे अमेरिकन कंपनी ने बोला है कि 5 लाख स्क्वायर फीट 5 लाख स्क्वायर फीट का ऑफिस चाहिए उनको. I'm happy to build the 5 lakh square feet office, but I don't know whether this American company is credible or not. Right? I don't want to build an asset and then find it's a useless tenant on the other side. तो मैंने कहा बताइए नाम बताइए देखता मैं कुछ कर सकता है नहीं. So he takes out his phone, right? He takes out his phone and he says ये कंपनी का नाम है International Business Machine. ठीक ठाक है. मैंने बोला आप चिंता ना करें सर, आप इंटरनेशनल बिजनेस मशीन के लिए 5 लाख स्क्वायर फीट बना दीजिए. बट आई लव दैट आवर स्मॉल टाउन इंडिया एलीट इज सो कॉन्फिडेंट ऑफ इटसेल्फ एंड सो स्केप्टिकल ऑफ द ब्रॉडर वर्ल्ड. ये सवाल हम पूछ रहे हैं our small town Indian boys and girls and our entrepreneurs are saying we now live life in our own terms. I think these are the breakpoints which characterize India today. The old world of credentialing, elite education का ठप्पा, वो मेरे LSE का ठप्पा या किसी और का ऑक्सफोर्ड का या IIT का ठप्पा is increasingly irrelevant in modern India.
Or the colonization mindset that we all grew up with. तो गोरा बोल रहा है तो ठीक ही होगा.
बिल्कुल. और अभी नया जो mindset है, questioning that has come, the iconoclasm, the rebellion, the desire to forge our own identity is powerful. But what it does is it leaves a whole ecosystem of conservative middle class Indians, like say my parents or my cousins, it leaves them unmoved because they don't know how to find their way to this new India, where which club your mom dad belong to, how good your English is, which educational institution you top, is all completely irrelevant. Can you hack it on your own 2 feet in the commercial economy? That's the breakpoint, and that's why it's such a challenging, edgy breakpoint.
Right. So if Shinjini, one sentence, if I can ask, the old way of doing things that is broken, and you're happy to see that. You were warned that if Saurabh and I are on stage, you will never get through that.
I'm getting to know that. Okay, so what Saurabh was just saying reminded me of something that is not in the book, so I'll tell you because the rest of it is in the book. When I first met Vijay Shekhar Sharma for the Paytm, offer discussion, it wasn't meant to be an offer discussion. It was just a call. आ जाइए बात कर लीजिए, and I was talking to him. And we had a 4-hour conversation. And what really struck me in that conversation was how he's 10 years younger than me. And I came from a rural background. I came from a small village school. He came from a Aligarh Hindi medium. Both of us went to a Hindi medium school. But I had spent a substantial amount of my time to learn to speak English well, to look well groomed, to eat with fork and to appear to be to fit in. And I think I did a rather good job of it.
Of course.
Maybe too good.
I agree completely.
But when I met Vijay, it really struck me how confident he was and how he played that same story. And both of us have very interesting stories of how we learned English. So I learned English through literature because I came from a background where my family was deeply steeped in literature, but it was all read in Hindi. And so I went and I read the same books in English, and that's how I learned English. And Vijay learned his English through music. And so, English music. And so we had a very long conversation about this whole idea. And I realized that in those 10 years that passed between my growing up, which is the 90s. So my book is all about the 3 decades of liberalization. And Vijay comes in 10 years after that into the game. And there is already the breakpoint that has happened. So what you're seeing now, Saurabh, with the youngsters is possibly a much more ubiquitous version of that story. But that story had started post-liberalization, 10 years into liberalization already. And if you see this book, which you must, you will find many stories like that. But I'm just going to tell you one more breakpoint, which is very different from what we've been talking about, which really struck me. There's a story in this book from Bhopal of a woman that I meet. And she says she comes from Udaipur, gets married into this family in Bhopal where her husband is a chartered accountant and her father-in-law is a chartered accountant. She comes from the Marwari background. And when she gets to this house, she has to wear, she wears a pallu, she wears a ghungat, she doesn't work, she makes rotis, lots of rotis. And she does it without, questioning or challenging. And then one day she says her 2-year-old daughter, she's making roti and her ghungat is like this and it goes back and her daughter pulls the ghungat. And she says she did that and something broke inside me. And I realized that if I keep doing this, then this girl will also grow up to be somebody like me. And I did not want that. So she leaves her, there's a whole story of what she goes and what she's able to do, and she does it. And when I met her, she's an interior decorator, she runs her own business, but that's how it started. So one thing that I have realized is that people have completely shifted how they think about their daughters. That is a big breakpoint for India. So the reason I wrote this book first, this is my first book of non-fiction, and the reason I focused on women was not because my heart bleeds for them. No, my heart bleeds for the men also, please know that. I love men as much as I love women, so please don't, it's not because of that. It's because I realized that the breakpoint that is happening is going to impact women disproportionately positively. And for my first book, I wanted to be nice, which is very hard for me, but I still tried.
By the way, this men versus woman dichotomy, right? At the time hoga, we should discuss because it's very, very interesting.
Okay. Let me just decide that. I think they are just going to sabotage the mic, so I will interject. Okay, so jumping into the topic of the panel, which is the future of work, which is going through very interesting time. Women in a tier 2 town finally have a tier 1 career, and what is your research shown on that?
So there's one thing is to have a tier 1 career, and another thing is to have a tier 1 life. So let me just put it out there. It is not possible for a woman in a tier 2 to have a tier 1 life at all today's India, okay? Which is why everybody runs through Mumbai, not even tier 1 cities. Mumbai is the only city where a woman can actually have a life, which is why everybody wants to come here and nobody blames them, okay? So that reality has not changed much. What has changed though is that women have always traditionally gotten stuck into all the different geographies. So men migrate for work, they see the better economic opportunity, they go there. Women are like that bagatelle game. You throw it and it may go and get stuck in any place. So they are talented women, regardless of their talent or ambitions. They could be sitting in Patna, they could be sitting in Cochin, they could be sitting. It's not because of her, aspiration. It's because she got married and she found herself in some place. Now, the ability of that woman to take the game that life has given her and to make it a bigger game has increased disproportionately, largely, and by quite a substantial bit. I'm only scratching the surface in this book by meeting the 300 women that I meet and telling their stories, but actually that is quite a positive shift. The sad part about that is that it is still the same few families. So there are no gate crashers here. Please don't.
We get to the gate.
Yeah, but there is a significant ability to do that. So in my book, I call it the go home and go big syndrome. Our generation was told that either you go home or you go big or you go home. Meaning, if you're a loser, you go home. The choice was that you go out and become big, or you stay home and be a loser. Now that dichotomy is not there. People are choosing to stay home and go big, and they are winners.
Great, thank you so much. Now, extending on to that, Saurabh, in Breakpoint, you talk about corporate efficiency. So if Shinjini is busy, women are working from remote corners or wherever life puts them through, does that actually help the economy compound, or does wealth, according to your research, still stay trapped in the big city hubs? So does your research support what I want to call demetronization of work?
So look, I think let me just first address the gender dimension, because the gender dimension, as I said, is super fascinating. So in my preceding kitab, in Behold the Leviathan, I covered the gender dimension. Quick summary. What the data is showing in our country is at all levels of education, women are pulling way ahead of men. Men are regressing, women are progressing. Men are not just regressing relative to women, men are regressing even relative to themselves. And there's plenty of data in the book to show that real wages, while your and my compensation, after adjusting the inflation, is now going south. So roughly, people like us are losing 1/3 of our purchasing power every decade now. So in that regard, the conventional big city elite, we're clearly on the back foot. The jobs ain't there. The wage growth is also evaporating. In parallel, what's happened, and this is very visible in the income tax data, in parallel, India has created a new generation of crorepati's. So if you look at the 2014 tax returns, India only had 40,000 people filing returns of ₹1 crore or more. Not in Bombay, Delhi. They are in Sholapur, Kolhapur. So the way these stories proceed, and going back to Indore, let's take my real estate developer friend. A lot of these people initially started out, say 20, 30 years ago, 1991, as Shinjini mentions. They started out in the 90s as, say, middlemen of some sort of young, say adhatiyas in the local sabji mandi. As they did well for the first 10 years, they used some of that money to get one of their children into the local government, Zilla Parishad, yeah, if they were lucky then Vidayak, but Zilla Parishad usually. Then they used that to muscle in on local construction contracts, right? Wo bridge ka ho, sadak ka ho. From that you can obviously steal money, right? With that black money, they then built a small real estate empire. And again, whether it's Indore, Kanpur, it's very similar story. Even if you go to Warangal, it's a very similar story. And then they would buy gentrification. They would get a Maruti dealership, a Titan showroom, a Ashok Leyland dealership, and soon they'll be part of the 3 or 4 ruling families of Unnao or Kanpur, right? This cohort, I call them octopus, you can see why I call them octopus, right? They're able to suck wealth from every aspect of the local economy, and their bachas are turning out to be superstars. Their bachas have the confidence that their parents can game the system, they're well educated, and they can then go and conquer the world. And Shinjini's book actually describes in vivid detail how many of the kids of the octopus, or the octopi, never quite sure what the plural is, how the kids of the octopi are grabbing hold of the country and yanking it away. So wealth is getting, I would say, pluralized, democratized in 2 ways. The traditional elite are losing way rapidly, and the new elite, the octopi, are rising in district towns, and they are the new kings and queens of our country.
Okay, great. I think that makes a lot of sense on the future of work. But of course, Saurabh, we cannot move away from the future of work without asking, which is something that you have done a lot of work and is of interest to all the Gen Zs. The increased use of AI, which you looked very closely in your previous book, The Victory Project. So, for the next generation, for everybody, seeking a job here, AI, automation, we are strengthening the very skills that we used to build very well. You explained, of course, the octopus theory, but of course now there is a new elephant in the room, the AI. What is the message that you would like to give young professionals who are here at the Litfest as to the change that AI will bring and the future to work?
Look, I'll explain. The peril, I think, is apparent. The peril is apparent in the way Rajini framed the question. The peril is straightforward. It's called the substitution effect. So assume this is 1880 and Edison has just created the light bulb. The substitution effect is apparent. The candle maker and the gas lighter gets laid off through 1890s and 1900, right? So from the light from Edison, General Electric to roughly 1910, substitution effect, job losses as electricity lays to waste, a part of the American economy. The complementarity effect in those days was the birth of the gramophone, jazz singers, Hollywood, electric light, nightlife in New York, and a whole complementary economy sprung through the 1910s and the 1920s. We will reach the complementarity effect. We're currently going through the substitution effect, where many of the most prominent employers in our country are laying off roughly 1/3 of their workers. They're doing so relatively openly, and why shouldn't they? There's no sin in using technology to lay off people. They're doing so relatively openly. It's having a dampening effect in the job market. The complementarity effect will come. One of the challenges of complementary effect for the youngsters here is it's always hard to second guess what it would be like. We know there will be a complementarity effect. My hypothesis in the book is for the entire world, their data cleaning, their data labeling, and the training of bots. So, say you have a hospital chain in Latvia, they want to automate their customer servicing. They will hire a bot trainer, perhaps in Coimbatore, perhaps in Nainital. They will hire a bot trainer to automate the Latvian hospital's customer servicing. That contract ain't going to go to TCS. They'll probably go to some middleman in Daryaganj, and from Daryaganj, they'll get routed to some second-tier town where a youngster will be sitting in his bedroom training bots in Latvia or South Africa. My reading is that wave of entrepreneurial ascendancy, right, will create something like 100 million jobs. And just to put that 100 million jobs into context, at its peak, Indian IT used to create 1 million jobs a year. So when we say 100 million jobs on the back of India becoming the AI back office of the world, that I think would be transformational. A lot of that will be outside the big cities.
Great, that's actually a very good piece of data. Otherwise, AI is more depressing rather than uplifting. You gave us something that is motivating. So thank you so much. We'll hold you up to it when we meet you again for Litfest after Litfest going here. So we look forward to that. Now we move to the future of wealth, and I would like to ask Shinjini this
Rajini,
question.
I want to add something to this. It is not uplifting actually. The idea that there will be 100 million jobs is a decent enough idea. But Saurabh will also agree with me, and I think it is also part of your book, and it is part of my next book actually, is the corollary to this 100 million job creation is also that you are still the back office of the world, and you need to be moving up the spectrum on, because as humans you want to do also better quality of work. So it's not just that you always will be, as a country, we will not always be the country which wants to somehow feed our children. We've been through that cycle of, we were just joking about eating samosas because we come from the feminine mentality, and if we see food, we must eat it, because he's from Bengal and I'm from Bihar, so we can have that joke. But the truth is that now you are sitting in a country which for a few generations, so when liberalization started, my father would have been in his 40s, I was in my 20s, and now my son is 30. So think about it, we have been 3 generations of wealth creation, and the real estate game that you talked about has been played, the stock market game that we are seeing has been played, and there are many, many rich people who are now 3rd generation rich people, apart from the fact that who were already 4th generation rich people who were living in these metro cities and bubbles. There's a substantial amount of people around. Now that, you have to understand that the nature of work is not only about getting a salary at the end of the month. The nature of work is also about the nature of work. And to kind of create that differentiation, to create that whole spectrum of work, you also need leadership of a certain type, you need ecosystems of a certain type, and I won't go into detail, but in my book I go a little bit into detail of where those things are getting built, Better cities, better cultures, better living styles. I told you, why nobody will want to go and live in a tier 2 towns, even if you can make the money. Why do people come and live in these horribly polluted cities? Because they are able to experience a sense of freedom, a sense of culture. They are sitting here. This is not something that you will be able to do in, I don't want to say Patna every time. Or you will be able to do probably once in a year or something like that. And there are goods that are, the externalities of working at a upper spectrum of work are very different from the externality of working at the lower end of job creation. So as I said, it is good news, because we still have many mouths to feed. We are a large country of very poor people, so it's not to be underestimated. But it is also something for us to keep in mind and not be over celebratory about, because we just tend to get there very quickly. Yeah. And my job is to keep saying that.
Good activity.
Yeah, indeed. Now, if we move to the second aspect that we thought we'd discuss here is about the future of wealth. And this question is to... No, I mean, you're the star, you're the founder of Salt, so it's related to that. So women are inheriting more wealth because of, the discussion that we've been having, the 4th generation of wealth creators. So more and more women are inheriting more wealth. But there's also a pink tax. There's a lot of jargonization in finance that somehow women seem to lag behind. You have a startup that I think tries to address that. So I just wanted to know your views on, does inheritance actually lead to true agencies, or are just women holding money for someone else but not actually managing them? And how is it that through Salt you're changing that?
So I don't want to get into too much detail, but the truth is that the single largest factor that will close gender gap will be inheritance. Because by earning, no matter how much you earn, you will never be able to close the gap. To give you an example, I have always earned more in a month than my husband has done in a year, because he's an academician and a writer and an intellectual, and I'm a banker. So that's how it's been. But right at the end of it, after I build all my wealth and I'm very proud of it, I realize he's going to inherit more than what I have built ever. And that's just not fair. So the only way that this thing stacks up is women begin to inherit. And now you're finding many families which are, because years of family planning, you now have families that have 1 daughter or 2 daughters or 3 daughters. And unlike in the earlier days where the people would go and sign off their estates to nephews and grandsons and sons-in-law, more and more people are choosing to give away their businesses and their factories and their real estate to the girls. And the girls, as you said, many of them are actually choosing to quickly go and buy their whatever is the brand, and I don't want to badmouth brands, but whatever is the green emeralds or whatever they want to wear, and quickly letting their husbands do the management of their wealth. But there are many who are also getting in and taking care of this. There's a small section in my book which is called These Marwari Daughters. And these Marwari daughters were so impressive as I traveled through the country, and I'm sure you will agree with that. They are doing everything. And what is happening is because families have so much real estate that they are now saying, okay, this girl wants to open a cafe, give it to her. Because this real estate is just, there's so much, it's coming out of their ears. They don't know what to do with it. And there is such an incumbency disadvantage to any new person. So I can't go to Indore and open a cafe today because I will just not be able to afford the rent or the real estate. But the daughter-in-law of a family in Indore can very quickly take that and convert it into something. Whatever. She wants to open a dance school, she wants to open a school. How many women are opening schools all around the country, tuition centers, whatever you want to do. So there is actually a lot more ability to earn and a lot more, but the inheritance plays a very strong part in it. Now, how it destabilizes is sometimes you find that there is a story in my book of a girl who then builds this school and is part of that business. But eventually, she doesn't want to expand because she says, I'll get married and I'll go somewhere and I don't know whether I will get this or whether I will not get this. So essentially, it's not a simple answer. It's a very nuanced, multi-layered sort of a situation, but definitely better than it has ever been before.
I'll extend this question to you, Saurabh, since you are a wealth manager, so you've been interacting with a lot of family offices. We are seeing the inheritance quotient being a very strong aspect in family offices. But in your experience, the inherited wealth, are they sitting more and more, like Shinjini says, in real estate that they own and are giving it away in safe assets like gold? Is that really a breakpoint that is required that rewards equity? Because safe money is sitting in real assets, so traditional assets. Is there a breakpoint that is required that this inherited money goes into not just sitting in safe assets, as in your experience?
Financial assets, right?
Yeah.
So I think people far richer than me and people far better qualified than me have raised the same questions. Uday Kotakji, for example, has questioned what's happening to India's next generation, where many of them, regardless of gender, many of the next generation are happy to run family offices and choose fund managers like me and then spend the rest of the day owning their bodies at the gym and so on. Right now why this is happening so early in our developmental journey is actually a mystifying question. We're still one of the poorest countries in the world. We have a fairly fragile stock market. It's always been fragile. I don't think the government's ever hidden it from the public that this is a fragile stock market. We have an even more fragile real estate ecosystem. So it's actually quite mystifying for many of us, including, as I said, legendary bankers, as to why there is such a air of self-satisfaction amongst the Indian elite. That I've got my VC portfolio, and I've got my stock market portfolio, and I have my real estate portfolio. And as you're rightly alluding to, and I think Shinjini points out in the book as well, there's very little risk-taking that is happening. And it's very strange. Those who don't have can't risk-take, it's understandable. Those who have both in terms of money, wealth, and they have connections, they have political setting, as we call it. If you have the setting and you have the money, and you're not going to take risk, then honestly, many of us are scratching our heads as to what else does this country need to do to get investment going in the next generation's businesses. Because much as I enjoy going to smaller towns and hoovering up clients' money, I find it mystifying how little these places have changed. So for those of you interested in this, there's a town called Boisar. It's my lab town. It's 150 km from Bombay. It's 2 hours by Innova. I go every 6 months. And I've been going now for 18 years. Boisar, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Boisar today, much the same. And it's not some remote, desolate place. It's on the Maharashtra-Gujarat border. You think on the Maharashtra-Gujarat border, the bullet train is now going to go through it. There's a new port coming up close to it. Anyway, the highway is going next to it. You think we are a hub of development, industrial development. Anything but that. Right? You go today, you still find one Tanishq, one Zudio, one or two lens card, chashma wala lens card, and a conventional high street, and the same MIDC that was there, 10 years ago, that was there 15 years ago, and yet there are people in Boisar with serious wealth. They're kind of the local Adani Ambani equivalent in Boisar. So this piece is a little mystifying for us. White collar employed people, they're under the pump, they're suffering, etc. Understandable. Happens in any free market economy. Our elite have had such a wonderful run for the last 10 years, especially the octopus class. Why isn't the octopus class stepping up to the plate and taking the country into the new technologies? I don't have an easy answer. But for youngsters who are watching, it's an opportunity for you if you're able to grasp that the world is turning on its head. Much of the way we behave and invest today will fall apart in the next 5 to 10 years, and yours is the new world to invent. Then all power to you. You'll be able to benefit from the disruptions that we are seeing in India today.
So if I was to take this a little further to ask you more, so the inherited wealth, does it become a risk to India's productivity?
You could argue that for any country, right? But it hasn't happened elsewhere. It didn't happen in Japan at this stage of development. It didn't happen in China. It didn't happen in America. Why at this nascent stage of development are we losing our animal spirits? Right? It's not an easy question. I don't have any answer to it. What I've volunteered in the book is that the data is suggesting that roughly 1 million entrepreneurs are being born every year in India. Roughly 1 million entrepreneurs are being born, including government ka paisa and private sector angel money and venture capital money. They have roughly $40 billion available to them. Aisa bhi hai. $40 billion available of funding, million entrepreneurs. But the outcomes that we are seeing, and I've faced the outcomes of entrepreneurship in our country, the outcomes are really disappointing, and the actual results on the ground, where honestly there doesn't seem to be that much to show for the entrepreneurship, barring the octopi and their flourishing real estate and lending empires in India.
Okay, great. Shinjini, you want to add on?
Yeah, I think I 100% Saurabh. Even when I talk about the women, in fact, one of the common criticisms that I get, not criticism, attack that I get, is that why are you talking about rich women, okay? And it's because of this factor, because the people who actually are able to do something are the ones who have the money. And the ones who don't have the money, the gate crashing ability is very, very low in our economy. So whether it is because of caste, whether it is because of the education system having major variation in terms of access, whatever historical factors there may be, whatever structural problems we have, the truth is that the people who can take the risk, as you said, are not willing to do it, or they're not willing to do it because there's no ability question. They're not willing to do it because it is so easy to be living in that bubble. Because first of all, we have interest. Our money earns money. We're not Japan, because in Japan your money was going to lose value, and therefore you had to deploy capital somewhere. We are literally like that Padmanabha Swami temple. We are literally digging our capital into these places. The guy doesn't have to do anything, but because his property just keeps appreciating, he's able to actually live his life. It's a rentier. Yeah, it's the rentier class. And for anybody else to access that now at these costs that are existing in the economy, both in the market, as in the stock market as well as in your real estate, is harder and harder.
Let's just dwell on this octopus, right? Because the numbers are quite reasonably easy to put together. So in the income tax data, as I was saying, the latest tranche of data from the government shows 3 lakh Indians, 300,000 Indians, file returns saying they are earning 1 crore or more. Now assume, clearly that's underreported. Right? Assume therefore 1 million Indians who make at least 1 crore or more of annual income. Right? Now, what I discovered when I was writing Behold the Leviathan, the preceding book, was they're interconnected with each other through marriage or political alliances or business alliances. In fact, if you don't mind my saying so, Shinjini, many of the octopi I discovered are actually are in your...
And they are, and I don't deny that.
So they're the busy women, many of them are rich, busy women, powerful, rich, busy women. Right? Now, the defining feature of the octopi is the ability of sort of different octopuses to get the families wedded to each other. So you end up with a interlinked, especially there's a North India stretching from Bihar, Jharkhand, Bihar, UP, Rajasthan, Haryana, right? A lot of intermarriage stretching into Chhattisgarh and MP. And then there's a separate bunch of intermarriages between Maharashtra, Gujarat, stretching into the Konkan area, and a little bit with South India. In South India, obviously in states like Telangana and Andhra, there's plenty of intermarriages, but a lot of that also stretches into Coimbatore. Right? So superficially we look like an economy of strivers. In reality, the real movers and shakers are roughly these million families. They are our overlords, they are the kings and queens of modern India, they rule the country, they pay our politicians, and they are the people to whom we are basically at some level accountable. That's the narrative that I think is misunderstood. What's happening though is, in a way, the world is changing beneath their feet in a way that they can't control, whether it's the geopolitics or the AI piece. And that's why I find very interesting, almost subversive. The technological changes and the geopolitical changes are beyond their control.
So that will bring back the self-made.
That's the Sagar Manthan, yeah. That's the Sagar Manthan I'm watching with great interest and traveling to these towns with great interest to see, will the entrenched elite have the rug pulled underneath them, as many of the established industries get blown apart by what's happening in our country today.
Shinjini, what I would like to ask you is that, you've been saying that the new rich more or less looks like the old rich. The metros, the small towns starting to get stagnant. So how do we snap out of this? What would be your advice, if you have thought about, for a woman to gate crash, break the, with no pedigree? How does she gate crash?
Sure. So while I agree with the idea, and I write about that as well, that gate crashing is hard, I must say that I do not agree with the idea that off and by itself it is a problem. Because off and by itself, it is simply a demographic factor that you will have wealthy families. Wealthy families will marry and have children. They will perpetuate. There will be more capital available to a certain type of people to do more things, and they will do more things. So off and by itself, it is not a problem. The reason it is a problem in the towns that I go to, which is the smaller towns, the 30 cities that I visit, is because in those cities it is almost impossible, barring a few of them, to come from outside and to be able to enter into that circle. Because to do business, to be an entrepreneur, you also need local networks, you need access to talent, there are various things that you need, which becomes harder for a new person, especially because they have the choice to go to the top 10 cities and do the same thing. So why will I go to Indore and struggle to fight with the arms of the octopi when I can actually go to Pune and do the same thing much easier? So I'll go to Pune and I'll do it. So the reason I focus on the women is because there's a very interesting nuance to that. Because when these girls get married, they are often professionals. So there are girls here who come from professional families. They go to IIM and then they don't come from business families, but they come from an IIM and they get married in Bhubaneswar, and there they can't find a job that is of their caliber, because here she's an investment banker, she works in some investment bank, and then she's in Bhubaneswar, nobody gives her a job at that level. So she starts a business. She brings a very new type of dimension to entrepreneurship. We don't give credit to people for this because the easiest people to write off in this world are rich women. 100% of the time, the finest, the easiest people to dismiss are to say, अरे वो तो उसकी wife है, वो तो उसकी बेटी है, वो तो उसकी बहन है, वो तो उसकी माँ है. So it is very easy to dismiss that. But actually, when you realize the kind of businesses that they are building, and which was my reason to write this book, because when you start seeing that they can take that capital, they have not had access to capital. Very few of them have inherited the capital with which they have built this business. But when they get access to this capital, most of the times it is sort of a rent. It's like सब किसी ने बोल दिया कि 2-3 करोड़ ले लो, कुछ करके देख लो, अगर हो गया तो हो गया, हो गया तो हो गया में उसने रजनी पेक्टर बन गई है. ठीक है. तो पर जब वो बन गई तो that is a contribution to the local economy. Now see how many people are employed by Rajini Panicker, see how many MBAs are employed by her. So it is not so simple. There is a lot of nuance to that story the moment you introduce gender to it. And I'm not even getting into caste at this point of time, because the moment you introduce caste into it, then the nuance is even greater. You have to start understanding, and I'll just give you one little thing, because I've been going a lot to my village lately. So apart from the towns, there's this whole dynamics of rural India. And somebody said this to me, and it really opened my eyes. And they said, the problem with upper caste women has always been that they have always been expected to be docile and follow rules. So even if they are given education, even if they are given everything, they have to stay, sort of nice. Niceness is the best thing you can do. She's a very nice woman. But the moment you break out of that caste barrier, you suddenly find very bold women. I go for a walk and I see that in the mohallas that is outside of my mohalla, one woman is giving her brother-in-law tight slaps and she's and he's saying, matlab bhabhi, and she's like, dekhi main tere ko. You know, that woman, when she gets the education, when she gets the opportunity, she's going to play this game very differently. And let's just wait for her and let's give it to her. So it's not so. The moment you introduce these complexities of our society into this story, unfortunately we are introducing these complexities very late because people like us, in whose interest it has been to always run this country with a very monolithic type of business model, very monolithic type of politics. The politics is the one that is cracking it. You look at what Nitish Kumar did in Bihar. It's just a phenomenal example for any entrepreneur to learn from. The moment you get into that complexity, and unfortunately politicians cracked it first, but then politicians brought their usual corruption and different aspects to it. But when business does that, it's going to be something interesting. Whether we will do it or not, I don't know. But I'm just saying that I found it very interesting.
Great set of conversations, but we are at a Litfest, so we cannot conclude without some rapid fire questions. So, to Saurabh, one investment bank breakpoint that shocked you in the last year, and one sentence. One investment breakpoint that shocked you last year.
I didn't expect gold to precipitously fall the way it has. Thankfully, I don't have
Or
any.
rise.
But hopefully, I'll get by some of them now.
Great. So one busy woman habit we should all quit today.
Do not ever say you're too busy to take care of your money.
Great. And one last question to both of y'all. As the Max City Litfest gets bigger and bigger, and I'm sure 10 years from now it will be held in a stadium next door. Yeah. No one stadium next door. What is the topic on womanhood and wealth that you hope, with you, that we no longer will be discussing 10 years from now?
I think the woman entrepreneur will be ruling the country then, so I don't think there'll be any discussion about women being on the outside.
No, Saurabh is already being very nice. I will take that.
So great, I think we have time for a couple of great questions, if there are any. How many? I think we will have time only for 2 hours.
I've never seen hands go up so fast.
Yeah, that's how interesting your conversation is.
I must say one thing that has really made me very happy, I've been speaking a lot, is the number of women I've seen taking photographs.
Yeah.
I really, in smallest of places, at every place.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Varun. Gen Z is changing the scenario. Like you're talking, like the one thing I can say that, like I'm currently working SBI. I have seen around 20-30 people. They have joined, and within 3 to 4 months they have. They want to. So they are breaking the rules. They want to have their me time, and they are very ambitious, and that is very good thing. So what are your thoughts on that?
I wish I knew.
So I think what you're saying is I think I agree with a lot of that. What we're also seeing though is rates of unemployment. The data is lots of data coming in. Rates of unemployment in India now for graduates talking about are now higher than the 80s. So I was a teenager in the 80s. I was pretty bad then. I didn't think I would ever see that era again. But Azim Premji University published some data 2 weeks ago that in a year, suppose 100 graduates emerge, barely 3 are getting a right for a salaried job that year. And overall, both in my book and in the Azim Premji University study, overall rates of graduate unemployment are around the 35% mark, which are, as I said, higher in the 80s. So whilst it's good to celebrate the positive aspect of Gen Z, और जैसे आप बोल रहे हो मीडिया में भी एक celebration रहती है, I'm not so sure how widely the broader narrative about mass graduate unemployment is being understood and the ramifications that it will have. Right? This is bound to have social ramifications. If you have 1 in 3 graduates not being able to get a job for years on end, it is bound to have social ramifications. We need to figure out what those are and see if we can head them off.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. It's a very interesting conversation, thank you. But I want to ask both of you. We've been talking about polarization in the country, and we're seeing it right there in small towns in tier 2, tier 3 cities, and you can see the cause. You can see the elite, the wealthy who do not want to invest in trying to smoothen it out. Is there any way that can be done? Because it looks like polarization is not just in big cities where it's so stark. It seems to be very stark there too.
I mean, look, now you're raising the million-dollar question. There is an economic phenomenon called polarization. It was first analyzed in 2002 in the context of the Western countries by 3 economists who are described in the book. It's called the polarization hypothesis, because what it says is what we've been discussing. And you get an elite coming through super fast, and then you get a tail, an underclass tail. The middle class office worker or the middle class factory worker gets smashed. I'm not so sure the small town elite or the big town elite have an answer to it. In the book, I've said that it's a business, it's an entrepreneurial opportunity in India today. I think it's the defining economic opportunity of the next decade.
I think a lot of Indians will begin to look homeward. And that's thanks to everything that's happening in the rest of the world. Because if Gandhi had not been thrown out of the train and somebody hadn't put no dogs and Indians allowed on some street, a lot of things wouldn't have been built in India, including the airlines or the hotel or whatever industry. I think Indians over post-liberalization, very largely, as they became wealthier, they just kept looking outward. So if you were in a village, you looked to the city. If you were in the city, you looked to the metropolitan cities. If you were in the metropolitan cities, you looked to America. You've always been looking outward. And all of us are not Elon Musk. We can't be looking at the Mars now. So we will be, as we begin to realize the cross currents of this new geopolitical situation also, many people, and with the capital that is already accumulated, with the value that's already been, I'm hoping, there are days when I feel very optimistic. Today is one of those. Something to do with Saurabh maybe. So, you want that maybe people will come back and build better. Like there are a lot of women in my book who are building better cities, building better, things. So maybe there is, because like Saurabh says, there's a lot of work. Like every time people tell me, oh, I'm retired and I'm feeling irrelevant, I'm like, क्यों भाई तुम्हारे पड़ोस में कोई पेड़ लगाने की जगह नहीं है? ऐसे कमाल ही है, अब irrelevant क्यों feel कर रहे हो? जाओ कचरा होगा कहीं पड़ा हुआ. सफाई करवाना शुरू करो. I live in the mountains. Every day I go for a walk. I'm like, I need to get my gloves and start picking up this trash which the tourists are throwing here. There is always something to be done. Why is it that we are not doing work and we are sitting and because we kind of got ourselves into that hustle. That if work was not paid, if there was no monthly salary, then life was not worthwhile. And I think your Gen Zs have woken up to that very early, even to their own peril. But maybe seeing them, their parents will realize something.
Great. So do we have time for questions? Just one last.
I want to ask. Hi, I am Preksha and I am one of the Marwari girls. My father is ready to share his business with me, but I am not interested in his business. I want to do myself. But so I am still figuring out which business I should do and how should I start. From kids, I have saved up to 60,000 for my business. But I am on confusion and dilemma that which business should I start and how should I start. So can I have some tips or
listen? I have to check that question. This book costs some 500 something. Okay. Let that come out. Let that be your first investment. Buy this first of all. Secondly, do never underestimate the effort that goes into building a business in the early stages. Saurabh is here to attest to that. Anybody will tell you that. But I think children just completely underestimate, and it is the fault of the parents. Parents always say, मेरी चिंता मत करो, मैं यहाँ गाँव में मर जाऊँगा. तुम जाओ, live your dreams, शहर में जाके रहो. So somehow we are raised with this idea that we have to make it on our own. Do never underestimate the effort that your parents have put into that business. So before you make your decision to do something, please put that also as one of your choices. That's fine. It's like sometimes arranged marriages work better than love marriages, no? So look at it, look at everything and decide. But whatever you do, just read, because there are 80. I met 300 women. There are 80 women whose stories I shared. It will give you some sense of understanding of how people actually think about building a business. And best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shinjini, Saurabh. Thank you for helping us navigate this.